So this is a typical environment that we get brought into to do testing. This is a large instrumental rehearsal space. Basically, this room is entirely block painted. It's got a suspended ceiling, which is fiberglass. It looks to be approximately, let's call it 14 foot plus a bit. I'll measure it while I'm here.
Are you sure about that?
So this is shorter than you would want for a large ensemble. You would really want 18 to 20 feet for a large ensemble. It's got noise complications in the fact that you have two unit vents. One's running, one's not. But when it is running, this background noise tends to take out the nuances of instruments. So certain instrument groups are affected negatively by that amount of noise being in the space. The complaints we've had about this particular one is it being too loud and not being a really good rehearsal environment. Probably because the only thing that absorbs sound in here is the ceiling, which is the one thing in a space you really don't want absorbing sound, because what you want to see happen is you want to see, oh, there's my hand. You want to see sound bounce off of the ceiling across the ensemble so that opposite sides of the room hear better. The other thing with this room, and this is common in a lot of spaces, there was this big thing about nodes that happened years ago where everybody said rooms should not be parallel, because if they're parallel, then you get bass nodes, which you do, but you also get those on a stage. So when you talk about rehearsal spaces not being rectangular, this angled wall here makes for a funky reflection system relative to the way sound behaves. And when we look at how we're going to correct this space, we'll be testing it, the existing, hey, and it's oddly dead because the ceiling makes it dead. However, instrument bounces off of these walls make it seem not dead. So the odd part I'm expecting to find in the testing will be probably a fairly low reverberation time, but an imbalance in frequency response, and probably some significant flutter echoes from that wall to these windows over here, and some other bounce around echoes that we'll probably find in the response curves for the room. So in our corrections, we do what's called parametric equalization, where we use a variety of materials to absorb different frequencies, and we look at the bounces and try to make the environment more like you'd get on a stage where some sound disappears above you. You simulate an orchestra shell environment to get sound to transfer as part of that energy. And then we look at the sides of the room. In an ideal situation, that side and this side, which would be the sides of the stage, would be absorbing sound just like they do on a stage with the curtains and the wings. But in this case, we probably can't do that. This side of the room, which is the conductor side, we're going to ask them to get rid of the whiteboard, blackboard, so that we can treat the entire area behind the conductor with absorptive material to simulate the way sound behaves in a room with a stage. The sound goes past the conductor into the audience area where a lot of it is absorbed. So the sound pressure getting to the ears of the conductor is significantly lower in that environment than it is in here. So if I'm standing in here, and maybe I'll demonstrate this a little bit with a sound source later. If I'm standing here and I've got this really large ensemble playing out here in the room, I've got their direct energy and I've got very strong reflections off of this side wall over here and side wall over here. So I really want at least a very large area behind the conductor to absorb sound, and up to at least maybe 12 feet. Depending on how much material we need to tame the room and to tune it to a frequency balance that is appropriate for large ensembles in rooms like this. Because in here they do concert band, they probably do jazz ensemble. I saw some stringed instruments in the closet here, so I'm guessing they do, they've got double basses. There's got to be an orchestra that plays in here. So you want it to have warmth. So you want more low frequency energy, less mid and high frequency energy. Fortunately, with masonry as a base material, this keeps the bass in the room. So that means whatever we treat, we can deal with mids and highs and get a good condition out of the space because we've got the base material being masonry. In rooms that are completely gypsum, Normally what we end up with is the room is bass deficient. And then we end up saying, hey, we got to add another layer of drywall to the whole room, so we get 2 layers or something else to get the low frequency energy back up. And then on the ceiling side, we'll be looking at a combination diffusive absorptive ceiling, definitely not all fiberglass tile like this. Probably 50% of it will be reflective surfaces and diffusive surfaces, and the other 50% will be absorptive. And then we'll transfer the rest of the absorption onto the walls in key areas. Now, talking about the issue of reverb time and loudness, there's 2 kinds of loudness. There's the reverberation loudness, and then there's direct reflection. So if I'm playing from over here near this wall, and my opposing sections are bouncing off of the front wall and off of this wall and back into my ears, it may seem uncomfortably loud to me, and I may hear certain instrument groups improperly relative to the ensemble balance because of those strong reflections. So we tend to treat rooms where the first, let's say, 10 feet of the room is where we try to control reflections relative to how the ensemble hears them. Now, if we need more material to control reverberation, we may do it up high. But the areas from, let's say, 2 feet off the floor up to about 10 feet off the floor are critical to control because that's where everybody's ears are. And since we're binaural hearers, if I'm sitting here and I'm getting an extremely strong reflection in my left ear from this side of the room, that's not a good thing to me having a sense of my playing relative to everyone else in the ensemble. The other thing is when the back wall is all block, if I end up with a percussion section, oddly enough, they're always back here. On a stage, the back wall is typically heavy velour curtains with an airspace behind them. So in here, with this block wall back here, this is taking the percussion section and ramping them up to the point where they're out of balance with the rest of the space. So our typical approach is this back wall is highly absorptive down to low frequencies, which means we're using much thicker materials in the back of the room. So that's kind of an overview. Then the other aspect of this is they're having problems with isolation. So let's take a look at the isolation. Now, I already went up and took a look above the ceiling, found there's gaps above the block walls, but that's not their biggest problem. Biggest problem is, first of all, this is not an acoustical door. This is a regular wood door with, it's got double glass, but kind of chintzy. But you can see through the door. Whatever seals there are here are minimal and not working. There's a gap under the door. So in terms of isolation from this space to the next space, there's no way there's any kind of isolation there. Some of the other things that may be going on, there's a ventilation grill up there. And we'll go take a look and see if there's a matching ventilation grill in the room next door. Let's go take a look. Actually, there is no matching ventilation grill going into the next door. Now, these doors, oddly enough, are a double thick, very dense solid wood system with double panes of glass. They feel like maybe slightly thicker than normal. So the doors themselves have the potential to block some sound, but not when there's no acoustic seal. Now, the acoustic seal at the perimeter here, which they attempted, is not actually sealed to anything. There's also nothing to hold these doors shut. So even in the best condition, if these doors were held shut and there was a center mullion, you might have a shot. So these doors need to be replaced if they want isolation, and not with something like this, something with magnetic seals that will hold itself shut. So that's enough talking about what we're going to do here and why we're here. I'm going to get on to doing some testing. So now that we've walked around a music room that obviously has some serious problems in it, let's talk about options of how you treat a room. Every material in a room has one of a number of properties. It either absorbs sound, diffuses sound, or reflects sound. And they all do it different ways. Nothing universally does any of these. They all do a bit of different things. So let's just take a look here in our little studio nightmare. Things are a little messy down here. Been playing a lot of a lot of games. Let's just take a look at some things. For example, this acoustical panel, which has a particular tonality. This particular one is tuned to a specific frequency. Now let's just take a look at something like a piece of drywall. Now you hear that resonance in the drywall? When sound hits this, drywall, in this case where it's insulated, absorbs bass. This is a cheap door. It actually resonates. So if I had a bunch of these in a room with an airspace behind them, whatever sound hit them, this frequency would be amplified. These are some 2-inch standard acoustical panels, and these absorb sound very well over a wide range of frequencies. These are portable because I move them around to do different things. And then we've got things in here like acoustic foam. These are some corner traps that have not been installed. Someday. These obviously, if you tap them, do virtually nothing, but they absorb a fair amount of bass in the corner because they're relatively thick, and in corners that's where the bass is showing up. Here's another set of acoustic panels that I'm using actually as a vibration isolator for these monitors. So the thing with acoustical panels is that they don't all absorb the same frequencies. They absorb different frequencies depending on thickness, surface treatments. Like this particular one has a resonating panel underneath the surface. So when you're looking to tune a room hardly ever is actually going to need all the same material everywhere, although you see that commonly being done. You go in a music room and you'll see that they just got a bunch of 2-inch panels on the wall, or they've got some pyramids on the walls and some other panels, and that really doesn't accomplish good tuning. What we do in our projects, and what really should be done, is something known as parametric tuning. Parametric tuning means using a variety of materials to take out specific frequencies and deal with other issues in the room. And then there's also the factor of diffusion, which is the more musical side of a room, to get rid of the sense that it's just a box. Now, one of the things, though, about all of this, like even with these 2-inch panels here, these 2-inch panels are sitting on top of a drywall wall that absorbs bass. These panels do not absorb bass. They're not thick enough. However, when they're on top of a wall, it is absorbing bass because they're porous enough. Low frequencies go right through them and still get absorbed by the material behind. So when you're looking at how do I treat a room, if you just take factory data on these panels and you look at that as what you're going to end up with, you'll be wrong. So if I was to map this room out and look at these panels and say, okay, I'm going to put a bunch of 2-inch acoustic panels in here, and this is what I'm going to end up with. No, I'm going to end up with that plus a lot of bass missing because of what's behind them. So one of the things we do in our work is we go out in the field and we do testing to verify exactly how things behave. The way things are done in a laboratory to test a product is a controlled environment with what's known as a diffuse sound source in a chamber. That's never the way it is in the real world. Ceilings, there's things called E400, which is 400 millimeters of air above the ceiling. Well, what if you've got 1,200 millimeters of air above the ceiling? So when we go out in the field and test final projects, we then use adjustment factors to how we determine what to appropriately use as a value for materials we're using in a project. And it's usually not the factory lab value. It's usually something beyond that. And these corrections can be severe depending on the conditions you're dealing with.